Hello, dear friends. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Everywhere is confused as to know whether Nnamdi Kanu has been released or not. Yes, I stormed to this video and I was like, oh my God. How I wish is the truest truth for now. Yes, it sounds like AI generated. It sounds real. But did Trump really give ultimatum? The, the answer is yes. There was an ultimatum given. What Nigeria would do next, nobody knows. Because they have been daring everybody, they have been daring every ultimatum. But this time they know it won't be business as usual. I'm not sure if you know what is good for you, release Mazi Nnamdi Kanu and clear your hands. Tinubu, if you know what is good for you, give an order that it will be released. Save the remaining change in your pocket because when the thing that will happen, you may lose all. And that is just what I have here right now because I want you to follow me to the end of the video and see what I saw in the morning that made me to come up online right now. Thank you very much. I know you are all willing to go to the end of it.
The sun had not even fully risen when the world began to shake with news that spread faster than fire. Everyone was talking about the same thing. Donald Trump and William Ruto had spoken. Both men, known for their boldness and power, had warned the Nigerian government in a way no one expected. Their message was short, clear, and strong: release Nnamdi Kanu within 24 hours or face what is coming. This warning came after reports spread that Nnamdi Kanu's health was getting worse inside the DSS custody. For years, he had been held there, facing pain, silence, and endless waiting. His followers cried, his people prayed, and the world asked questions that had no answer. Why was he still locked up? Why was his voice being silenced? But this time, something changed. The message from Donald Trump and William Ruto carried weight that no one could ignore. The White House and the Kenyan State House both released statements. Trump said with his usual strong tone, if Nnamdi Kanu dies in detention, Nigeria will face a kind of storm it has never seen before. This is not just about one man, this is about justice. William Ruto also spoke clearly from Nairobi, saying, we cannot stand and watch when a man is being treated unfairly for speaking his truth. Let him go now. Let Africa breathe peace. In just a few minutes, their words filled social media platforms. Millions of people across Africa and beyond began posting and sharing the message. Some wrote that history was about to be made. Some said this was the moment the world would finally see justice for Nnamdi Kanu. In Nigeria, the government was taken by surprise. Inside the presidential villa, top officials held a long emergency meeting. Military officers, intelligence chiefs, and ministers sat around a large table, whispering and arguing. Everyone understood what Trump's words meant. They had seen what he could do when he was angry. The same applied to President Ruto, who had a growing influence across Africa. Outside, the streets were already talking. People gathered in small groups. Some played recordings of Trump's voice on their phones. Others prayed loudly, asking God to touch the hearts of the leaders and make them act quickly. The tension was high. News channels across the world began to report the story. Big stations like CNN, BBC, and Al Jazeera put Nnamdi Kanu's picture on their screens. The headline was the same everywhere: Trump and Ruto give Nigeria 24 hours to release Nnamdi Kanu. In the southeast, the air was filled with both fear and hope. Markets went quiet. People stopped what they were doing just to listen to every new update. Some said, this time it is serious. The world is watching. Others said, they have no choice but to let him go now. Across social media, hashtags began to trend. #Free Nnamdi Kanu now was on every post. Young people started making videos, speaking directly to the government. One said, the whole world is standing with us now. If they do not free him, they will regret it. As the day went on, reporters camped outside DSS headquarters. No one was allowed in, but everyone waited to see what would happen. The atmosphere was heavy. Inside the detention center, Nnamdi Kanu was calm. Those who saw him said he had a quiet strength, like a man who already knew freedom was near. By evening, The pressure grew stronger. The Nigerian government began receiving messages from different countries, asking for a peaceful resolution. Diplomats and international organizations started calling for immediate action. It was no longer just a local matter, it had become a global issue. Inside the government house, fear mixed with confusion. Some leaders said, "We cannot bow to pressure." Others said, if anything happens to him, the country may face serious trouble. Time was running out. The warning from Trump and Ruto had only a few hours left. That night was long for everyone. People could hardly sleep. The streets were quiet, but the internet was alive. People prayed, shared messages, and watched the clock. They counted the hours, the minutes, the seconds. Would Nigeria release him? Would they ignore the warning? No one knew. But one thing was clear, the world's eyes were now on Abuja. Inside DSS custody, soldiers stood on alert. Journalists stayed outside the gate, whispering and waiting. Some believed that before morning, something great would happen. Others feared what could come if the government refused. In some parts of the southeast, church bells rang through the night. In others, candles were lit, and people gathered in groups to pray for safety and freedom. Many said it felt like the night before a great miracle. And far away, in Washington and Nairobi, Trump and Ruto's teams were watching closely. They had made their point. The next move was in Nigeria's hands. As the clock moved toward midnight, the air became heavy with tension. Even the wind seemed to move slower. Nobody spoke loudly anymore. It was as if the whole country was holding its breath, waiting for what the morning would bring. Would the government free him and calm the storm, or would they ignore the world and face what was coming? That was the question on every heart, as the longest night in Nigeria's history began. The night passed slowly, and by dawn, Nigeria felt different. The tension that had filled the air for hours was heavy and silent. Everyone was awake. Across cities and villages, people were checking their phones, listening to the radio, and waiting to hear one thing: has Nnamdi Kanu been released? At exactly 6 a.m., the silence was broken. A short message began to spread on social media: Mazi Nnamdi Kanu has been released. At first, many did not believe it. People thought it was fake news or just another rumor. But within minutes, the news was confirmed. The Department of State Services, DSS, had quietly followed the order and freed him before sunrise. That message spread faster than lightning. In towns across the southeast, church bells began to ring. Men and women ran out of their houses shouting with joy. Some knelt on the ground and thanked God. Some cried as they spoke his name. It was like a dream that had finally come true after many years of pain and waiting. Across Nigeria, people began to post videos online. In every post, one sentence kept showing up: he is free at last. The internet could hardly hold the excitement. At the DSS headquarters in Abuja, reporters and security officers filled the area. Then it happened. Nnamdi Kanu stepped out through the gate, walking slowly but confidently. He wore a clean white outfit that shone under the early morning sun. His face looked calm, and his eyes carried the strength of a man who had been through fire and still came out whole. The crowd outside began to shout his name: Kanu, Kanu, Kanu. Their voices filled the air like thunder. He raised his right hand gently and smiled. There were no long words, no drama, just a simple, peaceful smile that spoke louder than 1,000 speeches. When the reporters moved closer, he spoke in a clear and calm voice. "Freedom is here," he said. "No man can stop the truth forever." His words were simple but powerful. It was the kind of statement that stayed in people's hearts. He thanked Donald Trump and William Ruto for standing for truth and justice. "They did not just speak for me," he said. "They spoke for freedom, they spoke for Africa." His tone was soft, but everyone listening could feel the weight of his words. Then he said something that surprised many. "I forgive all that was done to me. I have no anger in my heart. What matters now is peace and unity." Those few words touched millions. People who had expected anger saw peace instead. People who had expected revenge saw forgiveness. It was a powerful moment that showed that Nnamdi Kanu had grown stronger, not weaker, through his pain. After his short speech, he walked slowly toward the waiting car, surrounded by a few security officers. The crowd followed behind, singing songs of freedom. Some waved flags, others held pictures of him high in the air. It felt like the beginning of a new story. Around 8 a.m., television stations across Nigeria began to air the footage. The headline was everywhere: Nnamdi Kanu released after global pressure. News anchors spoke with excitement, trying to describe what had just happened, but no one could fully capture the emotion of the moment. On social media, world leaders and celebrities reacted. Donald Trump posted, "Justice has spoken. Freedom wins again." William Ruto also wrote, "A new chapter for Africa begins today. Truth will always stand tall." Messages from other African countries began to pour in too. People from South Africa, Ghana, Kenya, and even parts of Europe congratulated the people of Nigeria. It was not just a national story anymore. It had become a moment of hope for all who believed in justice. Meanwhile, in the southeast, joy turned into celebration. Markets that had been quiet for days came alive again. Drums rolled, songs filled the air, and children danced on the streets. It was as if the land itself was breathing again after holding its breath for too long. Elders in the community gathered to pray and give thanks. They said the day would be remembered forever, the day the voice of one man shook the world and broke the walls of silence. But not everyone was celebrating loudly. In Abuja, government officials moved quietly, trying to calm the situation. Some wanted to act tough, but they knew it was too late. The world had already chosen sides, and this time, it was on the side of truth. Inside his car, Nnamdi Kanu looked through the window as they drove him away from the DSS compound. The streets were lined with people waving and shouting his name. He smiled again, but this time, his smile carried peace, not pride. He whispered to himself, "God kept me for this moment." Hours later, he arrived at his family home. His loved ones welcomed him with tears and songs. There were no long speeches, just quiet hugs and deep emotions. The pain of the past years had finally been replaced by the peace of freedom. In his next short address to his followers, he said again, "We have waited long for this day, and now it is here. But we must use it wisely. Let us not fight each other. Let us not bring more pain. Let us build peace and freedom together." His words were gentle, yet they carried authority. Many people who listened said they had never heard him speak with such calm strength before. As the sun went down that evening, the world began to see the pictures of Nnamdi Kanu smiling, standing tall, free again. It was a day that would be written in history books, not just as his Freedom Day, but as the day a man's courage and faith changed a nation. That night, songs of joy filled the air again. People celebrated in every corner, thanking God and singing, "Freedom! Freedom at last!" After years of pain, after sleepless nights, and after endless prayers, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu was finally free. The morning after Nnamdi Kanu's release was one the people of Nigeria would never forget. The air felt lighter. The fear that had held millions captive for years seemed to fade away. For once, the streets of the southeast were filled not with tension or protests, but with songs of joy and shouts of freedom. From Enugu to Aba, from Owerri to Onitsha, people danced and sang. Children waved small flags in the air. Market women left their stalls to join the celebration. Men gathered at crossroads, clapping and chanting his name. It was as if every heart in the region beat to the same rhythm, the rhythm of freedom. Nnamdi Kanu had returned home, and his people were proud. But the story did not end there. The world was still watching. Later that same day, Nnamdi Kanu spoke again to the world. His voice was calm, strong, and full of peace. Standing in front of a small crowd of supporters and journalists, he said, "I am home. I am free. I thank everyone who stood for truth, who prayed for me, and who believed in justice." He paused for a moment before continuing. "My fight was never against peace. My fight was for freedom, fairness, and dignity for my people. I was called a rebel, but I was only asking for justice. And today, justice has spoken." His words were simple, but they carried power. Those listening could feel something different in his tone, a man who had faced darkness but had chosen not to become bitter. He looked around and added, I know many are angry. I know many have suffered. But I want peace, not revenge. We must rebuild, not destroy. We must forgive, not fight. The crowd went silent for a moment, taking in his words. Some people had expected fire in his speech, but instead, they found peace. That peace began to spread like light. It was a message that touched not only those in Nigeria but many across Africa. Soon after, Donald Trump and William Ruto both posted public messages congratulating Nnamdi Kanu on his release. Trump wrote, "Freedom always wins when truth stands firm. Nnamdi Kanu's strength is a lesson for all." Ruto said, "Africa rises when justice is done. Let this be a new beginning." Those messages were shared millions of times online. People began calling the day of his release the Day of Freedom. Across social media, artists created songs, poems, and artwork celebrating him. Some called him the voice that never died. Back home, Nnamdi Kanu spent the evening quietly with his family. After many years apart, he finally sat at his own table again. His family prepared a simple meal, and there were tears of joy as they ate together. He told them, "We have seen darkness, but now we must live in light." That night, the southeast was alive with celebration. Fireworks went up in some towns. Drums echoed from distant villages. People danced late into the night, thanking God for mercy and strength. It was a night when hope returned to a land that had suffered too long. But Nnamdi Kanu's thoughts were already on the future. The next morning, he met with community elders and youth leaders. He told them that his release was not just about him, it was about a new chance for everyone. "Let us not use this freedom to destroy," he said. "Let us use it to build. Let our voice bring peace, not war." He also spoke about unity. "We must not see ourselves as enemies," he said. "We are all children of the same land. Let us build an Africa where truth is not a crime, where leaders fear justice, and where people live free without fear." His words spread quickly. Many people began to believe that this was the beginning of something new, not just for Nigeria, but for Africa as a whole. World leaders began to speak out, praising his message of peace. Human rights groups that had once fought for his release now called him a symbol of hope. Journalists who had followed his story for years said they had never seen such calm strength in his eyes before. Even those who had once criticized him began to speak softly about him. They said, "Maybe this man was never the enemy. Maybe he was just ahead of his time." By evening, television stations across Africa played his speech again and again. Everywhere you turned, you could hear his voice saying, "Peace, unity, and freedom." In many homes, families gathered to watch. Parents told their children, "This is what courage looks like. This is what truth sounds like." As the sun set on that historic day, Nigeria was quiet again, but this time, it was a peaceful quiet. The noise of anger had been replaced by the calm of hope. People went to bed with lighter hearts, believing that maybe, just maybe, a new dawn had begun. For Nnamdi Kanu, it was not about fame or revenge. It was about purpose. In his heart, he knew that freedom came with responsibility. Before going to bed that night, he prayed silently, thanking God for keeping him alive to see this day. He whispered, "Now the work begins. Now I must help heal my people." As the stars filled the sky, he looked out from his window. The wind was gentle. The night was calm. And for the first time in a long time, he was free, free to breathe, free to dream, free to live his purpose again. In the days that followed, people continued to celebrate. Some called it a miracle. Others called it destiny. But one truth remained the same. A new chapter had begun for Nigeria and for Africa. And as the world watched, one man's story, a story of pain, patience, and peace, became a symbol that no matter how dark the night, the morning will always come. For the first time in many years, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu slept not as a prisoner, but as a free man, a man whose voice had changed history.
I believe it's true. Do you believe it's true? What I expect is that this thing, as it was said, will happen to Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. He will just be sleeping somewhere else in his home as a free man, change his clothes and speak to Biafrans. We will all hear and we will all chant for joy. that is it. Thank you very much.